2 weeks ago, I hit the USA Today Bestseller List with my latest book, Rebel, Find Yourself by Not Following the Crowd. And it was a dream of mine that I've had for a long, long time. But if I'm being honest, it wasn't an accident that I hit the bestseller list. And it wasn't just a nice thing that happened that I hoped might happen. No, this was engineered from day one. It was a dream that I decided to go and create. And in today's episode, I want to help you understand the simple but profound process to achieve any dream you have, whether you want to be a best-selling author like me or not. It doesn't matter. Dreams don't just magically come true. You go and create them. Let's unpack that a little bit. I want to take you back to my first book launch. My first book, How to Get Paid for What You Know, came out in 2022. And really, the dream of being an author started in 2020, right around the time the pandemic was hitting. I got serious about pursuing that dream. And so I've shared this story a lot of times. I won't belabor the point there, but it was in the back of my head. It's like, oh, I would like to be an author one day. I'd love to get a book deal. Well, loving to have that happen doesn't make it happen, but I decided to make a commitment to figuring out the process of how do I get an agent and a book deal and a proposal and write a book and all that kind of stuff. Long story short, I got that book deal. I wrote that book, and I knew that I needed to focus on getting as many pre-orders of that book as possible if I wanted a good shot at hitting any of the major bestseller lists. Now, if you're unfamiliar with how becoming a bestseller works in general at a high level for authors, it's very simple. Typically, the bestseller lists, whether it's USA Today, Wall Street Journal, which that list doesn't exist anymore, but it might come back, New York Times, but typically, Publishers Weekly, typically any of these lists are based off of how many units you sell in a week. Now, Amazon is an easier list to hit, and I'll tell you about that in a second because I've hit that both times because they renew their bestsellers lists and rankings almost every hour, if not every hour. So you just have to sell the most units in an hour to hit their lists. But typical bestseller lists are over a given week. And some are even over a month, but typically it's over a week. So the goal is, how can I sell as many units in 1 week to rank with all the other books all around the country? So think about it. What is the week that you're most likely to sell the most units? Well, because most of these bestseller lists count pre-orders on the week the book goes live, that's your most logical week to hit the list, right? If you can pre-order or pre-sell books for 6 months, and they're all just saving up, and then the week your book is published, your pub date, and it's available for purchase, whatever you sell that week counts, of course, but all 6 months of a backlog of pre-orders get rung up that week. So that is any author's best chance, typically, to hit a bestsellers list. Now, if the book really creates a movement and it just takes off and word of mouth spreads or Oprah endorses it or whatever it is, then a book can catch fire and easily sell as many units as it needs to in a given week to beat out other books and not be a brand new book. I mean, there are plenty of books that do that. It's just not easy and you can't control that. So the only way to control hitting the bestseller list is to pre-sell as many copies as possible. So I knew enough about how the way bestseller lists work to do that for my first book. Now, the New York Times is an entirely different beast. It's not really a bestseller list. It's an editorial list. They say that themselves. They do look at who's sold the most units, and you do have to sell a lot of units for them to even take notice of your book. But even then, they just sort of pick the books they want. So you could sell a couple 100,000 units, as some authors have done, and not make the New York Times bestseller list because the boys and girls up in New York don't like you or your message or maybe who you vote for. It just depends. There's a lot of mystery there, but they get to choose who they want on that list, and they're very open about that. So there's nothing shady. They say, hey, we pick who we want to pick. But the true bestseller lists are Amazon, USA Today, Wall Street Journal, if that comes back, Publishers Weekly, etc. And so either way, you got to move units. You got to pre-sell. I knew enough to know that's true. So in my first book, probably 5 to 6 months out, I started focusing on pre-orders as much as I could. And I did a few different things. I did an entire mini podcast that you can check out, How to Become a New York Times Bestselling Author, where I interview some of my favorite New York Times bestselling authors. And I started to pre-push my book then. And then I used my list and I told my email list, hey, my book's coming out. I'm going to give away bonuses. And that's why you see a lot of incentives for authors. Like if you pre-order my book now, I'm going to give you all these bonuses, a course, downloadables, an audiobook, whatever it is, right? Because they want you to pre-order, and I wanted you to pre-order the book so that it will all count for week one. I don't want you to go, oh, I'll check out the book when it comes out later, because then you might not, and then your sale, even if you do buy it a couple weeks later, won't count for week one. So I'm incentivizing people. I did a cool book club the first time around, which was really, really fun. I did a lot of stuff. I also did a lot of PR. So I got on some major media news outlets. I hired a PR strategist who got me on CNBC, Forbes, Business Insider a couple more times. That had been on it years and years ago. Some major podcasts. So we did a lot of PR. We did a lot of pushing to my list. And I pre-sold a decent amount of books for my first book. A number that I felt like, from what I was seeing from my publisher every week, the top 10 best-selling books according to BookScan, which rates this, I was saying, I think I might be able to crack that top 10. And so when my book came out, I was super excited to see where I landed, because I moved a decent amount of units. Well, I didn't hit any of the major bestseller lists. I hit Amazon, number 1, by the way, in new release in entrepreneurship, and then number 9 overall in all entrepreneurship books, not just new releases, which was awesome. So How to Get Paid for What You Know did well on Amazon, but that was it. And I was so disappointed. And I was so confused. I was like, how come I didn't hit USA Today or Wall Street Journal? Like, New York Times, outlier, but USA Today, Wall Street Journal, like, I feel like I was in the running for that. Well, come to find out that BookScan, the organization that tracks sales and reports them to the bestseller lists, that's where they're pulling their numbers, does not include ebooks, digital books, so Kindle doesn't count, does not include audiobooks, so Audible, only counts hardcover or paperback books, physical books. Now, my people pre-ordered about 50% physical. The other 50% was a mix between ebook and audiobook, which is, to me, pretty normal these days. A lot of people like audiobooks. A lot of people read on Kindle, right? But those didn't count as sales, according to BookScan. Well, how disappointing is that for me to find out after the fact? I had no idea, no clue. So all of a sudden, I'm like, okay, so I sold enough units, and I looked at my total numbers, and I probably would have hit that week, but half of them, quote unquote, didn't count. Also, come to find out that if you sell all your books in one store, aka Amazon, most lists outside of Amazon, of course, won't really count all those as sales, because they're like, well, there's a lot of people buying from one store. We want to see this book be a bestseller all over the country, in different regions, in different bookstores, and different types of bookstores. They want to see a variety, because to them, that tells them that, like, your book is catching fire and it's word of mouth and people are buying all over the place. And so your pre-orders have to be fulfilled a certain way, run through certain retailers in order to count for some of these lists. No idea. So I say all that to say that with this second book, when I knew I was going to write it and I signed the second book deal, I knew I wanted to do something different with this book launch. And so I looked around. I was like, well, who's doing this well? Well, some of my best friends were hitting the Wall Street Journal with their latest books. And I'm asking, well, how did you hit it? What did you do? What was your book launch strategy? And I kept hearing over and over again, Brand Builders Group, Brand Builders Group, Brand Builders Group, Rory Vaden, Rory Vaden, Rory Vaden. So it was about a year and a half ago. I was like, all right, fine. I keep hearing about Rory. I keep hearing about Brand Builders Group. I'm going to look into this. To keep this part of the story short so I can get on with the meat of this episode, got to know what they do, realized they have this down to a science. This is what they help personal brands do, especially if you're an author, is they know how to hit the bestseller list. They've had multiple New York Times bestsellers, USA Today, Wall Street Journals, the Ed Milet's of the world, the Amy Porterfields of the world, you name it. They've got it. John Gordon's a client. I mean, all kinds of people. So I was like, well, I'm going to hire them and figure this thing out. So I did. They gave me a plan. They told me, here's the way it works. Here's how you need to sell more units. Here's how we need to strategically fulfill those units so they count. Because you could sell a lot of units that they don't count. Here's how many units you need to hit for each list and what each list wants. Here's the list you're most likely to hit given what we know. And here's what we're going to show. They engineered the whole thing, gave me a plan. And so about 6, 7 months out, I started executing the plan. And most of y'all didn't even know what was going on or how much work was being done, but a ton of work was being done under the surface to pull this thing off. executing the plan. And honestly, because it was so involved, I had to like take my eyes off a lot of other things that I was working on. I closed a few offers. I simplified a few things. I said no to a lot of opportunities, and I focused. And then 3 weeks ago, book comes out. 2 weeks ago, we get the final numbers for my launch week. And not only did we hit the USA Today bestseller list, but we were in the top 50 of the top 150 books, which put me in the print edition of the paper the next day, which meant I was in one of the top books in the entire country. And this is not just business. This is not just nonfiction. This is like, I'm competing with Bluey and kids' books. I'm competing with trashy romance novels. I'm competing with everything you can imagine. And I was number 37 of all books sold that week, which put me in the top 50, of course. So it was huge and it was amazing, but it was not an accident. It was engineered. It was a lot of work. It was following a plan. And here's the takeaway. The only reason it worked is because I focused on that above all else this year. I literally did. What you focus on grows. What you focus on works. But to focus on it means, by definition, you're not focusing on other things. So many other things were a bit of a mess this year. I'm having to clean up some of those things. But this was the decision and the choice I made. And there's a lot of nuances to how you hit the list. That's not the point of this episode. The point of this episode is to clear up any confusion. Good things don't just magically happen. They're worked for. They're engineered. And you can't even control the outcome, but you can control the focus. And because I knew I wanted to hit the USA Today bestseller list this year, I focused on it, executed, we got it done. But other things did not happen. So let's apply this to you, because I don't know what your dream is. I don't know if it's you want to become a best-selling author. I don't know if it's that you want to hit a certain amount of income in your business. I don't know if it's you want to take your business from 40 hours a week down to 20 hours a week, like a lot of my students. Like whatever it is, it may not even be business related. It may be like I want to buy a house, or I want to pay off my house, or I want to, whatever your goal or your dream is, we all have them. It's just that most people don't achieve them. And most people who don't achieve them blame everybody else, or the economy, or the timing, or their season of life. But most often than not, your dream is achievable. You just need to focus on it. And there's 4 simple steps. This is how I hit the USA Today bestseller list. This is how you're going to achieve any of your dreams. Let's unpack it real quick. This will just be some tough love for you, because this is not going to be like mind-blowing, but this is the truth about how I've achieved anything over the last 15 years of being in business and being out doing this kind of stuff. You ready for this? Mind-blowing step number 1, decide what you want to grow in this next season. Decide. You cannot grow everything at once. You can't have it all, friend. I know you want it all. I'm going to get in shape, and my business is going to do 7 figures, and I'm going to work 5 hours a week, and I'm going to get on major media and press, and I'm going to hire a team so I don't have to do any work I don't want to do, and I'm going to, whatever. No. Pick one for now. One at a time. What is the thing that you are most fired up about right now that you want to focus on in this next season? Decide what you want to focus on. And in that decision, and the word decide literally means to cut. Like you're cutting. Where are you going to cut? All these other things have to go away. It's like a slice, right? I'm deciding, I'm cutting all the things I could do and just focusing on this one thing, which means you have to be okay with other things suffering for a bit. You know what suffered for me in this season? Partially income. I shut down my membership last year, which was multiple 5 figures a month recurring. Shut it down for a couple of reasons. But one of the reasons was I knew this year was going to be a lot of work focusing on the book launch. And I really knew I could juggle both. And dude, if you were in my brain, you would have heard me say, "Oh, I could do both. I can do it." But just because I can doesn't mean I'll do either of them well. And I didn't want the book launch to suffer. I really wanted to hit the USA Today bestseller list, and I didn't want the membership to suffer and my customers to suffer and be taking their money and not serving them fully. So I just shut it down, refunded anybody who had an annual plan, and gave up, multiple 6 figures this year from that product alone. to focus on the book launch. So that suffered, income suffered. I would say my content this year suffered a little bit. This show, the YouTube channel, it's been great. There's great content this year, a lot of great content, but I haven't been able to focus on it as much as I wanted to, full disclosure. And the focus is beginning to come back, and it will be coming back as we wrap up this Q4 and get into Q1 of next year. A lot of so many cool things I want to talk to you about and share, and I will be sharing soon. But I knew that this year I was creating so much content and doing so much behind the scenes to get this book off the ground and hit the list that something had to suffer. So my content suffered a little bit. So anyway, this is real. And to that point, I don't know how much you could tell or how much I shared as much as I felt was relevant to you or helpful to you during the process. But most people, here's how most people see the book launch. About a month before the book came out, if they were paying attention, like the month of August, let's say, book came out early September, they started to notice me posting more on Instagram. Maybe some of the episodes here on the show were more focused on the book. And they saw me popping up maybe on some podcasts talking about the book. And so they're like, oh, Graham's got a book coming out in a couple of weeks. What they didn't know is that I had pre-sold most of the books that I pre-sold before a month out, probably before 2 months out. About 6 months before the book came out, I was actively pre-selling the book, creating a private launch team and community, creating bonus content, pitching for speaking engagements to have them buy bulk books, doing events and including bulk book purchases for people who bought tickets to those events, finding strategic partners, pitching to get on big podcasts, some of which came out strategically right before the book. Some of them, unfortunately, haven't come out yet because of the timing of the podcast, but trying to make those relationships, finalizing endorsements of people that might want to reciprocate, putting together an entire virtual summit. A lot of you came to that, getting speakers for that. Like, there was a lot going on behind the scenes to pull that off. And so when people got excited, like, oh, I'm super excited for your book, man. I know you're starting to get to work. They had no idea that I'd already done the work. Like, I'd already done the work. Like, I had virtually hit the USA Today Bestseller List before people saw the work on the surface. And so I think that's a sub lesson for many of us, is when you are achieving a goal or focusing on something, people see a little bit above the surface, but most of the work is happening beneath the surface, and people don't understand it. They're not going to notice it. They're not going to clap for you, but you got to know what you're working on, and you got to know what gets results. And so it's going to be mostly hidden work, but then they'll see like, oh my gosh, wow, you're a USA Today bestseller. You did it. Wow, it's so amazing. And now people want to talk about it. But I was the one having to do all the work under the surface and talk about it for so many months. That's why, like, I was exhausted when the book came out, because it felt like I've been running a marathon for 6 months. People are like, wow, has it just been a lot of Instagram you've been posting? I'm like, no, dude, that's not a thing. But they don't understand. So for you, step one is just decide. And if you're listening to this in real time, it's like, look, it's almost October. So you got a quarter left of the year. You could think about it in a quarter chunk, 90-day chunk. What do you want to grow over the next 90 days? Like, just get serious over the next quarter. Focus on one thing and one thing only to grow before the end of the year. And be okay with other things suffering a bit, because they will. And some of you, that's the part that hangs you up. You're like, I don't want things to suffer. Welcome to life. You can't be excellent at everything. You got to choose. You got to choose. So number 2 is do your research and get help if you need it. So basically, it's as simple as this. Very few of us have a dream that no one else has achieved. Okay, and I know some people are trying to get to Mars. Okay, very few people have done that. It's hard to do research on, like, who's gone to Mars? How did they do it? Sorry, Elon. Sorry, Jeff Bezos. But for the rest of us, pretty much everyone's achieved the dream you want to achieve. And so all you got to do is figure out who's done it and how do they do it. You can Google it. You can read books about it. You can buy courses about it. You can hire coaches and mentors and consultants about it. I do all these things. Think about what I did for this time around. Now, I hired PR and I read books for my first book launch to figure out how to do it. This time around, I just hired the best of the best, which is Brand Builders Group, to do it. And they know, they do this all the time. They know what works. Why try to imagine what I should do when I could just ask the best in the business what to do? So I paid them to consult me, coach me, mentor me, help me come up with a plan. And I learned a lot. I learned that a lot of what I did worked and why it worked the first time. And then I learned what didn't work and what was missing from my strategy the first time. And also, even the things that they told me, they said, look, here are even some options you have. These are all things that work. You don't even have to do all of these. These things are optional. These things are not optional. So like I got to even customize it a bit for like what I like to do and my season of life. And for example, I got kids. I'm not going to go speak all the time, but I did a few speaking engagements that I locked in and got bulk purchases of books in lieu of some of my fee for those speaking engagements. That's part of the strategy. And so I did some of that. If I'm a John Gordon and I'm speaking all the time, then I could do a lot more of that. But he's got grown kids. I got young kids at the house. So, but either way, they told me what to do. So what do you want to achieve over the next 90 days, 6 months, 12 months? Who's done it? Who can you go hire? Whose book can you go read? Whose course can you go watch? Whose YouTube channel or podcast can you listen to? Free or paid, you can do the research, whatever you can afford to do to figure it out. Right? Don't hope your dreams happen. Don't wing your dreams. Don't drift into your dreams. Just like go research and then execute, which is the third step. Map out a plan with timetables and dates. Okay. Back in February of 2024, when I finally sat down to do the consulting with brand builders more intently, I've been working with them for months before that, but we finally had a 2-day intensive on mapping out my plan. Literally, we created a spreadsheet. I walked away with a spreadsheet of not only everything to do, but dates that went into my calendar of when things were due. So all of March, April, May, June, July, August, 6, I can't count. I'm looking at my fingers. Wait, 6 months to the week, every task was mapped out. So from March through really the first couple of weeks of September, so 6.5 months, everything was scripted. I knew exactly what I was supposed to do every week. I didn't always want to do it, but I knew it because it was literally written down with dates and it was in my calendar. I always say this, nothing is real until it is in your calendar. I don't care what you're doing. If it's not in your calendar, it's not real. And you might be like me. I have a great memory. I can keep things in my head. It doesn't mean it's real because you don't see it. It doesn't confront you. The calendar is there to confront you. A calendar is there for accountability. Like, hey, remember you said you wanted to do this? Hey, remember you said you're going to the gym every Tuesday and Thursday? Hey, remember you said that you need to have this bonus created for your book launch page this week? Yeah. How about that, right? Your calendar confronts you and gives you accountability. So until it's in your calendar, it's just like, yeah, I want to do this, but you haven't committed to it. You got to learn to commit to putting things in your calendar so that you're facing them. And so that the good thing about it though, is you put it in your calendar and you're like, okay, this is real. Are we doing this? We're doing this, right? I'm doing this. So I love seeing things in the calendar because it confronts the wanting to have an exit plan, the backup strategy, the wanting to have the foot out the door part of me. It confronts that part of me. And it says, no, Graham, you're committed, bro. Like you're doing this. You wrote the darn book. It's a good book. It would be super sad for you to back out of the work now for the launch because the book doesn't matter if nobody reads it. How can you get thousands and thousands of people to read this opening week? You got to do the work. So you've decided what you want to grow in this next season and you're okay with other things suffering for a bit. You've done the research or hired someone who's done it before, right? So you can literally just do what they did. And then you've mapped out a plan with timetables and dates and you've put it in your calendar. And then you guessed it, fourth and final step, execute the plan. You got to do it. It's really romantic for me to say, I always wanted to be in the USA Today bestseller list, like to be in the paper, to be a top book in the country, be able to now say I'm a USA Today bestseller. It's really romantic to say I've always wanted to do that. And look, Rebel hit the USA Today bestseller list, number 37, one of the top books. Like it sounds like a dream. And the problem is, you post it on Instagram, you email your list, and it's like, look, We did it. And people have been so excited. And if you've been one of those people, I'm grateful for you. Like, I've gotten emails from people like you. I've gotten messages from people like you. So proud of me and so excited for me. And if you bought Rebel or multiple copies of Rebel, like so many of you did, I am so grateful for you, because I can't become a bestseller if I don't sell a lot of books, and you were a part of that. But the problem with me posting, like, look at what I did, look at what we did, is it seems like, wow, Graham had a dream and he accomplished that goal and he achieved that dream. I've got dreams. Yeah. It wasn't romantic, though. It was like a decision. I got help, and I paid a lot of money to get help. I put things in my calendar. I put dates on them. And then for 6.5 months, I did those things. You know what I'm saying? I just executed. And this is how anything is built. And you know this. It's funny, like, I coach incredible business owners. And so I'll get like a client, let's say they're doing $250,000 a year. And they're like, Graham, I got this business. It's great. I'm grateful for it. But I'm stuck. I'm stuck at 250. And like a year goes by and I'm not growing. And like, I'm not growing. And I don't know why I haven't. I want to hit $1 million and I'm not hitting it. And I'll ask, well, what's your plan to hit it? And they're like, well, I'm just hoping that, like, just keep doing more and it'll just happen. It's like, bro, what are we talking about? How do you think you hit $1 million a year? You just keep doing more of what you've done and hope that you get there? Like, that's not how this thing works. For very few of us, that can work. But most of us know, like, there is a method to reach 7 figures in your business, and there's different paths to get there. And people, based off of the size of their audience, the price of their offers, and how much work they're willing to put into it, are going to get there faster or slower. But it's still like a proven, well-worn trail that you can follow. But they just are hoping it's going to happen. And so they're frustrated. And so I'm hearing this frustration, and like what they want seems clear, but they haven't done any of these things we just talked about. They haven't decided that they're going to hit 7 figures at the expense of a lot of other things. They haven't even done the cost analysis of, like, what am I willing to give up to reach $1 million a year? Interestingly enough, a lot of times when we do this, cost analysis, like, well, to do this, it's going to cost you this. It could be your time. It could be, energy. It could be reputation. It could be your family. I mean, like, it really just depends. Like, we get brutally honest. What will it cost you to get this thing you want? Sometimes when you do that analysis, you go, it's not worth the cost. And I'm like, well, that's a win right there. That's great. Who cares if you make $1 million a year? That's never the goal. That could be a goal. It's a great goal. I hope you make many millions of dollars a year. The more money you make, the better. There's more good you can do in the world. But when you see that there's like a cost involved, you may not even want to hit that. That alone is helpful, because then you can decide, okay, maybe $1 million isn't the goal for me. Maybe the million. And one of my clients literally was like, you know what? I said I wanted 7 figures when I started to work with you, but now I really think I just want to go from 250 to 500. I think that's more of what I want. I'm not willing to give up X, Y, and Z to get there. And if I can get there without giving it up, sure. And that might happen. And it certainly could happen. But he's like, you know what, to be honest, 500K a year, this will change my life. And okay, beautiful. We decided that's what we're going to shoot for. Now, how do you get there? Okay. Fortunately for him, he's hired me. I've gotten there multiple times. And so I can help him come up with a plan. And then he just needs to put it in his calendar and have a timetable and say, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And then he has to execute the plan. I can't wave a magic wand and make him a $500,000 a year business. He has to do the work. But it's the same for whatever you want in your life or business, right? Wishing and lamenting and looking at an Instagram and comparing and, oh, they have the thing I want. None of that gets you what you want. If I just wished I was a USA Today bestseller, it wouldn't have happened. Even if I thought about it a lot, it wouldn't have happened. I had to go do it. Is this making sense? This is so basic. I almost didn't even do this episode. So the question for you is very, very simple. Very, very simple. What is the one dream you want to achieve in this next season? Let's say the next 90 days. For some of you, like, you can achieve the thing you want in the next 90 days. Absolutely possible. Some things might take a little longer. That's fine. If you're unsure how long it'll take, find out how long it'll take. That's part of the step 2, is doing your research. But like, think about it. What is the area of your life or your business that you want to grow the most? Do you want to grow your marriage? Do you want to grow your relationship with your kids? Do you want to work on your health? Do you want to like get really in shape? Do you want to feel really good in your body? Do you want to grow the income in your business? Do you make plenty of income, top line revenue, but you need to increase your profit margins, right? You need to make more profit, taking home money, right? Do you want to grow your profit? Do you want to grow your influence? You know, part of why I wanted to hit the USA Today bestseller list was for influence, right? It's a credibility marker. Part of why I wanted to give a TEDx talk like I did last year was for credibility, right? So like these were all things and dreams I wanted. There was multiple reasons I wanted both of those, but part of that was influence, right? When I'm a TEDx speaker and a USA Today bestselling author, and I've been featured on Forbes and Business Insider and CNBC, like these things give me clout that get me into rooms that I wouldn't get entry into, even if I deserve to be there. It's just, you know, people want to look at different things. So what is it that you want to achieve? And then pick one. Like you might have a couple things that come up. Great. Pick one to work on first. One thing at a time, one focus at a time. And if you want to go deeper, ask yourself, if I focus on this in the next 90 days, 6 months, 12 months, what else will likely have to suffer? I don't want you to go into this and be blindsided like, oh my gosh, the moment I focus on this other thing went down. Yeah, welcome to focus. What you focus on grows. That the subtext there is what you don't focus on doesn't grow. In fact, it might go down. It might fall apart a little bit. Are you willing to pay that price? Are you okay with that? So just do the mental exercise. Think it through. A silly example of this, and I only bring it up because it's on my mind because I brought it up with my coaching clients last week, was this great article that Tim Ferriss wrote on his blog years ago, and he put it in the back of the 4-Hour Workweek, his book, under a section called The Best of the Blog from years ago. But he has this great article called The Art of Letting Bad Things Happen. And it's a short little blog post where he describes coming back from a 6-week trip in Europe, where he like tangoed in Madrid and he rode motorcycles across bridges in Amsterdam. He did all these different things. Had a great time traveling for 6 weeks. And he came back and he describes sort of the hot mess that he came back to in his business, how he had missed some, a paperwork that was needed to be filed for the IRS. And so he owed a fee. One of his clients didn't get something delivered and like quit and like, canceled on them. There were major snafus. And he just describes all the quote unquote bad things that legitimately happened. He's not painting this rosy picture that he's just gallivanting around the world and his business is running perfectly without him. It ran without him, but there were still messes. And he comes back and he looks at all the messes that happened and he goes, worth it. Totally worth it. What he decided to focus on was himself and an enjoyable trip for 6 weeks. And what ended up suffering was some things in his business, but not his business as a whole, but certain things. And I thought that shows a level of maturity and wisdom and realism of the way life works. You're not going to have it all. It's not going to be perfect. I wish I could focus on hitting a bestseller list and everything else keep growing at the same time, but it's not realistic. I chose to focus on this one thing above most other things in my business, and I achieved it. And some other things suffered, but it was a cost I was willing to pay, a price I was willing to pay, and one I was upfront about and I knew was going to happen. And when you get to that place where you're kind of at peace with it, it gives you a lot more fuel to be like, all right, let's just go do this thing. Because yeah, this thing might slip or this thing might not grow as much as it used to, but it's okay because I'll have achieved this dream and it's worth it to me. So that's why you got to figure out what's worth it to you. What do you really want to focus on? Okay, that's all I got for you today. So, you decide. What do you want to focus on in this next season? What do you want to grow? And then execute the whole plan. Do the research, map it out, timetables, put it in your calendar, and then what are your daily, weekly action steps? Do them. That's the only way dreams happen is you do the dream. The dream doesn't just magically show up. And to every single one of you who bought Rebel, shared Rebel, bought multiple copies of Rebel, supported the message, or just sent a kind note to say, hey, I love what you're doing. I love the message of this book. I love how you're putting this out there in the world. Thank you. Literally, this is one of those dreams that you need lots of people, literally thousands of people to help you with. And you were a part of that. So I'm grateful for you. I'm honored. More great things to come. I'm super excited about what's ahead. The best is yet to come, and I'm excited to be here to coach and mentor you along the way for you to achieve your dreams as well. So let's do this together, and I'll see you on another episode real soon.